I want you to picture the physics of this for a moment.
Okay.
You're standing on the coast, looking at an ocean, millions of tons of water, driven by tides and gravity.
An unstoppable force, right.
Totally. But then all of a sudden, the water doesn't just crash, it flinches. It actually turns around and runs away in what looks like panic.
It's a jarring image.
Yeah.
It defies everything we know about nature.
Right. And then you pan over to the horizon, you see a mountain range, granite, limestone, the very definition of immovable.
Sure.
And suddenly, these massive peaks just launch themselves into the air. They start skipping off the ground like a young animal, like a lamb.
It sounds like a surrealist painting. Or maybe a high-budget movie where the special effects team went a little rogue.
Exactly. But this isn't Hollywood. This is the opening imagery of Psalm 114. It's this ancient text, only 8 verses long, but the imagery is so aggressive, so visceral, that you really can't ignore it.
And that aggression is completely intentional. Psalm 114 is a poetic retelling of the Exodus Israel's liberation from Egypt.
Right.
But what makes it so fascinating, and why we're talking about it today, is that it doesn't really focus on the human side of things, the politics. It's almost entirely about how the physical world reacted when God showed up.
It's like nature's perspective on a historical event.
That's a great way to put it. And our goal today isn't just to, admire the poetry. We want to extract the ancient wisdom here and then figure out how it applies to our own lives, to our trust and relationship with God.
Okay, so let's get into the text. It starts with a departure. Verse 1 says, "When Israel went out of Egypt, the house of Jacob from a people of strange language."
And we should pause there for a second. That phrase, strange language. It's so easy to just read past it.
What does it mean?
In the Hebrew, it implies something completely unintelligible.
Yeah.
It highlights this profound sense of cultural isolation.
So it's not just we were in a different country. It's more like we were totally and utterly alone.
Exactly. It emphasizes their alienation. They were outsiders, powerless. But then verse 2 hits you with this massive identity shift. It says, Judah was his sanctuary and Israel his dominion.
This is the part that always gets me. Judah became his sanctuary. I mean, when I think of a sanctuary, I think of a building, a temple.
Precisely. And that's the subversion. At this point in the story, there is no temple, no Jerusalem. The text is saying that the people themselves, this group of refugees, they became the dwelling place of God.
That's a huge claim for a group of slaves.
It's revolutionary. I mean, in the ancient world, gods lived in statues or stone temples. Here, God's home address is a moving group of people. They aren't just fleeing, they're being consecrated.
So they go from being nobodies with a strange language to being God's personal territory.
You got it. And once that identity is established, that these refugees are literally walking holy ground, that's when the environment starts to lose its mind.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
Look at verse 3. The sea saw it and fled. Jordan was driven back.
The sea saw.
Notice the compression of time here. The sea is the Red Sea at the beginning of the Exodus. Jordan is the Jordan River, which happened 40 years later.
Oh, wow. I never caught that. So he's covering a 40-year span in a single line.
Exactly. It's a pair of bookends. The poet is basically saying, from the moment they left to the moment they arrived, water just had to get out of the way.
And I love the verb fled.
Yes. The sea saw it and fled. In ancient myths, the sea was often a monster, a chaotic force the gods had to fight. But here,
no fight
at all. The sea just sees God with his people and it runs.
It's giving consciousness to the water. It's not just physics, it's recognition. The water knows who's coming.
And that leads right into the mountains in verse 4. The mountains skip like rams and the little hills like lambs.
Again, you have that incredible contrast. A mountain, the heaviest thing you can imagine, and it's skipping, which is so light, almost playful.
It completely destabilizes the world. Mountains are supposed to be the pillars of the earth. If they're jumping around like baby sheep, it means the fundamental structure of reality is, let's say, flexible in the presence of its creator.
It feels like the psalmist is having fun with this, because then in verses 5 and 6, he starts talking directly to the scenery.
It's like a mock interrogation.
Yeah. He says, "What ailed thee, O thou sea, that thou fleddest? Thou Jordan, that thou wast driven back? Ye mountains, that ye skipped like rams."
The tone there is just so important. He's taunting the most powerful elements of nature. He's asking, hey, what's the big deal? Why the panic?
And he's implying that the sea and the mountains know something that maybe we humans tend to forget.
And that is the core of the ancient wisdom here. Nature has no ego. A rock doesn't debate God. The ocean doesn't have a crisis of faith.
Right.
When the creator shows up, creation reacts instinctively to that authority.
So In a way, the inanimate world is more spiritually aware than we are.
In a sense, yeah. They get the hierarchy of reality immediately, and the psalmist answers his own question in verse 7. He stops asking, he gives a command, "Tremble, thou earth, at the presence of the Lord."
Tremble. That's a heavy word. Is this supposed to be about terror? Are we meant to be scared?
It's more nuanced than just fear. The Hebrew word can imply something like labor pains. It's a reaction to something so intense it changes you. The earth isn't shaking because it's afraid of being punished. It's shaking because the sheer weight of God's glory is too much to hold still.
It's a reaction to density, to presence.
Right. But then comes the twist. And honestly, if you miss this, you miss the whole point. We have all this trembling, this fleeing, this shaking. You expect a thunderbolt.
You expect destruction.
But verse 8 says, which turned the rock into a standing water, the flint into a fountain of waters.
He turns the rock, the hardest, driest thing in the desert, into a fountain.
It goes from the terror of mountains skipping to the tenderness of the giving people a drink of water.
That paradox is everything. The power that makes the earth tremble is the exact same power that provides for the thirsty.
It's not power for domination, it's power for sustenance.
Okay, so let's get into the analysis here. How do we bridge this ancient poetry to our modern lives? Most of us haven't seen a mountain jump lately.
Right, so the first big piece of ancient wisdom is about the unity of power. We tend to separate things. Here is nature and science, and way over here is God and miracles.
Two different boxes.
The ancient mind didn't have those boxes. For the psalmist, the God who guides history is the same God who tells water molecules what to do. There is no separation.
So the world isn't just a neutral backdrop, it's an active participant.
Exactly. The second insight is about identity and memory. Remember how they went from strange language to God's sanctuary? This psalm was a tool. Israel used it to remind themselves who they were.
We are the people for whom the rocks melted.
And that changes how you face the world. Finally, there's the idea of purpose over spectacle. God didn't split the sea just to show off. He did it because they needed to get to the other side.
His power is functional. It serves his compassion.
That's the line. Power serving compassion.
So let's bring this home. Let's say you're listening to this, driving to work, stressing about a meeting. How does this psalm strengthen your trust in God right now?
Well, the first modern application is using memory as a tool against fear.
Explain that, because remembering sounds a little passive.
Think of it like a data set.
Mm.
When you're in a crisis, your brain tunnels into the immediate threat. You feel like this is the end.
Total panic mode.
So the application here is to force yourself to widen the lens. Look back at the data of your own life. Identify your own Red Sea moments, the times you thought you were done for, but somehow you made it through.
So you're building a personal case file. I survived this, I survived that.
Exactly. It's cognitive reframing. You say, the God who got me through that layoff is the same God who is here with me now. Gratitude isn't just a warm feeling, it's evidence. It's proof that fuels confidence.
That's good. It makes it concrete. What's the second application?
Finding the sacred in the ordinary. We said the sea saw God. The challenge for us is, can you see what the sea saw?
Can we recognize God's presence in the world around us?
We live very disenchanted lives. We see traffic, bills, concrete. But this psalm suggests the physical world is vibrating with God's presence. The application is to cultivate an awareness that the ordinary things are actually vehicles of divine care.
We get so bored with miracles because they happen every day.
We really do. So if we can recover that sense of trembling, not fear, but awe, it changes our relationship with God. It makes us smaller, which is actually a relief.
Why is being smaller a relief?
Because if you feel like you have to carry the world, that's exhausting.
Yeah.
But if you're small and God is the one making mountains skip, you realize he's carrying you. All leads to rest.
Wow. All leads to rest. If God is big enough to handle tectonic plates, he can probably handle my problems.
Precisely. And the final application is trusting the God of the fountain.
The God who brings water from the rock.
Many of us have an impossible rock in our lives right now, a situation that looks hard, dry, and just unyielding.
And we stare at it and think, there is no life here, no hope.
This psalm invites us to trust that God can pull life out of the very thing that looks like death. He brings water from the flint. Trusting God means believing he can transform the nature of your problem into a source of provision.
That is a radical kind of trust. It's not just hoping the problem goes away.
No, it's hoping the problem becomes a fountain. It's the ultimate alchemy of faith. You stop seeing God as just a rule maker and start seeing him as the transformer of reality.
That really shifts the focus from get me out of this to show me the water in this.
Yes, and that is a much deeper way to live.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from skipping mountains to the psychology of memory. As we wrap up, we want to leave you with one final thought to chew on.
We always want to move from information to transformation.
We talked about how the sea saw God and moved. The mountains felt God and moved.
So the question is this. If the mindless parts of creation, the rocks and the water, instinctively recognize God and move for him, what does that say about us?
And more specifically, what is the impossible rock in your life right now? And do you have the courage to ask God to turn it into a fountain?
That's the question to sit with.
How will you apply this information in your life? Think about it. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Take care.